Alright YouTube, I'm wearing a fitting shirt for the subject of this video because it's about how he's a heretic has become he's a Nazi. And the new burning times that we are indeed in right now, replete with all the censorship and pogroms that you could possibly want. It's also a bit like the Satanic Panic. There's something in common right now between the globalists of today. Globalism, the really pro-multiculturalism crowd, the so-called tolerant social justice warriors. This general lexicon of scumwads is acting basically like the really opportunistic like televangelists of the 80s, or the really opportunistic and often rapacious individuals who were conducting all of the nude checks of the so-called witches back in the burning times. Yeah, there was a reason why there were so many women, disproportionately young women, being called witches, and it wasn't just because of superstition. I think the Witchfinder General was doing some naughty things, let's just say that. In the Satanic Panic sense, though, it almost makes more sense. The Satanic Panic was promulgated by a bunch of extremely easily alarmed pearl clutchers, which are basically the same as college social justice warriors with their triggered, oh, my trigger terms, I can't deal with this subject, I shouldn't have to learn actual facts, I should be able to learn some alternate view of reality because I'm such a special kid, I've got a trust fund and daddy gave me a car, so I can't learn this stuff because I'm the princess, something like that. They get really easily offended. And it's exactly like the original, the pearl clutcher part of the Satanic Panic. Once it became profitable to do so then, a bunch of evangelical leaders and assorted politicians and self-proclaimed celebrities got involved to write their books and so forth, and go on a pogrom, because they realized they could make money doing so. We'd think of Bob Larson, we'd think of the Peter Popoffs and Ted Haggards, the Charles Stanleys and Billy Grahams and all these other charlatan fuckwads, none of which actually believe in the Christian God at all. They believe in the dollar. And that's true. Every single one of them, Joyce Myers, all of these people, Ted Haggard, they're in it for the money, and in some cases for the perversions that go along with it, the sex, as Ted Haggard certainly was, and the crystal meth, apparently. Yeah, he was snorting it off of a male hooker's penis at one point. Not exactly a surprise. This is a sort of scumbag that led the Satanic Panic. Returning, though, to the modern era, you have the same thing. Now you have the Lena Dunhams and the Anita Sarkeesians and the Obamas and people like that who are perfectly willing to use the sort of moral panic going on today, the he's a Nazi crap, for personal gain. And that's exactly what they're doing. They use it to get a software deal, licensing fees, a book deal, maybe sue someone and get a lot of money on a defamation lawsuit. They can settle it out of court with some media firm that said unkind things about them, something like that. And then you have, naturally, some people fight back, like Hulk Hogan completely destroying Gawker Media or something like that. But it's a rarity. And much like the Satanic Panic or the Burning Times or something, there are a lot of people who disagree with the pogrom at hand, but won't say anything about it because they're afraid of being personally targeted. For instance, Burning Times. Most people understood that their neighbors were not practicing witchcraft. It was well understood. Most people were sane enough to realize what was actually going on. A rapacious Witchfinder General wanted to molest their daughter. Or the Witchfinder General wanted to buzz into town, get roaring drunk, and go torture someone because they were a sadist. Or the church authorities just wanted to crack down because they felt too many people in my parish are gambling and drinking a little too much wine. We've got to stop this crap. Call in the Witchfinder, something like that. Somebody wants someone else's property. Oh, I'll just call them witches. It'll be easy. They can't deny it. They can't provide evidence in their favor if they refuse to confess they're a witch. If they confess they're a witch, they're screwed either way. I can get their land for cheap. It'll get sold off by the parish or something like that. And this happened a lot. Fast forward to the last significant moral panic, the Satanic Panic. Same thing happens. Oh, you're a devil worshiper. No, I'm not. I don't even believe in Satan. Aha, he denied it. He must be a devil worshiper. He's part of Satan's underground. You should watch the documentary Satan's Underground with Geraldo Rivera. Because I will tell you this. In 30 or so years, whatever video platform is being used at the time, might be souped up YouTube, might be some holographic projection or some AI system for all we know. Older Generation Z individuals and whatever comes after that, Generation Z2 or something, I don't know. will be watching on some website, and they're going to watch like news coverage and interviews from our very period of time that we're currently in. In retrospect, they'll be antiquated, of course, and low quality and grainy and fucked up and a little bit weird. And they'll look at people and say, oh, are they like eating uranium? They look deformed. Like, I look back at people from the 50s and I think the same thing. I'm like, why is it that people look so much different, like their childhood photos in the 50s versus now? It's just weird. I don't get it. Something off there. I don't agree with that. A little bit odd. But they'll be looking back, and they're going to chuckle. They'll say, people were so uncivilized, so uncultured. They actually believe this crap coming from the cultural Marxists. Man, it was just a riot at the time. Must have been hilarious to be alive and an adult at that time. Whoa, it was so cool. They got to talk about evil Nazi conspiracies. But he's a heretic has become he's Hitler, essentially. If you have any opinion that's outside of the lamestream social justice warrior crap, you are a Nazi. And many people do have opinions that are outside. See, it's not a majority. The majority of people in antiquated times never believed that their neighbors were witches. But they're not going to say anything because they don't want to get called a witch and burned. In the Satanic Panic, the majority of people understood that Iron Maiden was not causing possession, that Led Zeppelin was not causing people to talk to the devil, that little Jimmy, probably by playing like some Magic the Gathering or something, probably was not engaged in sorcery, and that satanic cult murders were rare. But even the police at the time weren't willing to talk openly about that fact. They didn't want a bunch of pearl clutchers and evangelicals to show up and say, oh, even the police are infiltrated by devil-worshipping Satanists. We must fire them all and restore Christian order. It was a moral panic. Morality had begun to break down in the country in the sense of the evangelicals took hold, and they were all in it for the money and started feeding people dogma that's not even biblical. You can take one look at any hour randomly selected from any of their fucking programs and you'll see it for yourself. And they have audiences in the millions sometimes. Fucking Billy Graham, just an asshole. Charles Stanley's an asshole. Joyce Meyer's an asshole. They're all assholes. They're all in it for, they want you to donate to their megachurch or something like that. Not exactly small town chapel or something like that. And then you fast forward to now, it's the same thing. You've got the same style of opportunists, both political and celebrity and cultural, self-proclaimed gurus offering cures for the Nazism. Here's a suggestion I wrote about on my Tumblr about how we can stop the Nazis or something. And if you deny that you're a Nazi, of course, you'll be called a Nazi even more by more people. Oh, he denied it, that makes him a Nazi. Or you just accept the term Nazi and then, again, you're a Nazi. So you're a Nazi either way. But again, like with these past moral panics, people won't speak out against it openly. Not in any form that would be binding. If they're anonymous, they'll speak out against it. If you want to know how people really feel about the world, go to 4chan. Now, I'm terribly serious here. Many people in this world closet their views when they think that it's personally identifiable. They loosen up a lot when they think that what they're saying is anonymous. Now, as to whether it's truly anonymous, I guess you can argue either or. I tend to trust 4chan with anonymity. I mean, if you're like proclaiming like criminal stuff, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go shoot this school or something, obviously they're going to report it to the FBI. But if you're just stressing an opinion that's unpopular, I don't think they like actually would like out millions of people, because they'd destroy their own business model, let's face it. If they did, they'd go under in a single day. But yeah, go there if you want to hear what people really think about things. If you want to see what people really think about cultural Marxism, go there. And you'll find that it is woefully unpopular, with a demographic nonetheless that is young and supposedly a lot less conservative than like boomers and so forth. I think the average age there is like early college age, like 22, 23 or something like that. And you see overwhelming disdain for the far left. And if 4chan had existed back then, during the Satanic Panic, it probably would have been overrun by people posting metal albums, honestly, and saying, screw this shit, this censorship is retarded. And it is. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll make a prediction. Within 10 years, we'll look back on this period of time with these pink-haired dildo fuckers and their censorship, and we'll call it the Dark Ages and have a good chuckle. And it'll be completely over. Some of their figureheads will remain popular among small, cliquey groups of people. They'll keep making a living writing about how evil white men are, how the Nazis won, and how they must form an underground resistance, and there'll be a bunch of freaks and weirdos, like how we look at some of these idiots from the 80s, honestly. But yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel is that this too shall pass. There will be other moral panics thereafter, but it shows mankind has not achieved full intellectual maturity, let's face it. Because some of these people, they're thinking like people did back when you didn't have running water, you had literacy that was sub-double digit, people had terrible diets, they were horribly malnourished, most of what they ate was just grain, most of what they drank was grain, it was beer. Maybe they got wine and a ham on Christmas, and that's about all they got, essentially. They were like serfs and slaves and servants and so forth. And that's what you get. And yet there are people, supposedly the educated class, self-proclaimed, the social justice warriors say, oh, all these other groups of people are fucking dumb. We're the ones with the community college women's studies degrees. We're the ones that know what really goes on in the world. We should be in charge. And they look back and they would say that was an uncultured, uncivilized time, and yet they're using the same reasoning. It's exactly the same. They would look back at the 80s and say, oh, what a dark time in our history. People still believed in capitalism and so forth. And yet they're thinking the same way as a bunch of evangelicals. The social justice warriors don't even realize how closely they approximate some witch-burning judge from the 1500s or some satanic panic-leading small-town fire and brimstone evangelical from the mid-1980s. They are the same thing. Anita Sarkeesian, to me, looks a lot like Bob Larson did decades ago. Or like, what was his name, that famous witchfinder general? Was it Hopkins, I think it was, or was he the anti-witchfinder? I think it was him. And their new manuscript isn't the Malleus Maleficarum, or any of 1,000 randomly chosen conspiratorial handbooks claiming to expose some vast satanic conspiracy, like in the 80s. Today it's just a bunch of retarded Tumblr posts and opinion pieces written by people who are half literate. They probably have to have other people edit their work. I can't imagine they're intelligent enough to spell every word correctly themselves. So, yeah, it'll pass, but just deal with it. And then towards the end of this era, what will herald the undoing of the current era of globalism and multiculturalism, all these, the PC crap that we have now, the censorship and the pogroms, that is, at least on the social side. What will herald the end of it is when more and more people begin coming out to get angry about the fact that that's happening. When people who were formerly closeted about the fact that they don't agree with the social justice warrior stuff come out and speak out against it. And I see that already beginning now. We could be much closer than a decade away to the end of this filth because of what happened with Trump, honestly. Here you have a substantial minority, at least, of the population that very much supports that line of reasoning. Casting it off as a minority, though, I think is wrong. I don't think it's a minority. I think the majority of the population, a vast majority, stands against it. It's a vocal minority getting the attention through browbeating people using the media primarily. But it will pass in time. Hopefully thereafter, when sanity is restored, people don't immediately regress to trusting lamestream media. Hopefully people increasingly turn to the net and shut off their TVs and let all the MSNBCs, CNNs, Foxes wither on the vine. They don't need to exist anymore. And they were the problem, honestly. The media of the Dark Ages, basically the existence of the printing press, in the Renaissance, rather. Not the Dark Ages. Of course, they didn't have the press yet. During the Burning Times, though, things are printed out and distributed, and they become very popular. King James Demonology was a very popular book at the time, probably rivaled the Bible in terms of its circulation, and then people got wacky ideas from it. So that's what happens. Yeah, we're in a modern Burning Times. It's like Salem all over again. That's about all. Peace out.